Get full access to RFR only on Patreon. Become a member of the RFR Patreon community to get more Rebel Force Radio. Bonus shows and content are available right now only at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio.
Your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary.
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1!
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Oh, man, every year I want to come on this particular episode and start singing a Thanksgiving tune, and I lament the fact that there are no Thanksgiving tunes. I want to feel festive, seasonal. I don't know, what am I supposed to sing? Over the River and Through the Woods? Is that a Thanksgiving song? Adam Sandler's Turkey Song? I don't know. I wish we had... there's that one from that old Bing Crosby movie. I've got plenty to be thankful for. Well, that's what it's all about. You know what? It's not about music and songs and all of that. It's about being thankful, being grateful, and we are every bit grateful for you, all of you that are listening to this podcast each and every week. So this is our annual Thanksgiving Day special. And but in addition to that, and we'll get to those details in just a moment, we do have some news. Empire Magazine is going to be going on newsstands. In fact, by the time you're listening to this, it should be available on your local newsstand right now. A full cover edition of Book of Boba Fett with a bunch of stories in there covering the making of the series. We're going to break all that down, at least what you can expect from that. New quotes from Dave Filoni. Plus, we've got some clarification about when we're going to actually see that Andor series premiere. So, but really what we're here for is to hear back from you. This is the all feedback special. We've been doing this for a number of years. This year, we've got a twist, though. We got a twist. We are going to the cream of the crop. Our Patreon supporters, you're the ones that we're going to be hearing from exclusively this year. So it's your voicemails, it's your voice memos. You're the ones that get to the front of the gate and get in. So yes, we're grateful for all of you, but in particular this year for our Patreon supporters, because you guys mean so much to us, and it affords us the ability to keep doing this week after week after week. So thank you so much. I know one thing that I'm thankful for this year and every year, and that's my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Oh, turkey leg. Oh, turkey leg. Pass over another turkey leg.
Passover. Wait. Passover.
Oh, no.
What happened to you?
Wrong holiday.
You got something you got to tell me?
Okay. Oh, turkey leg, won't you hand me a turkey leg? No wonder it's so hard to find a song about Thanksgiving. It's hard to write songs about Thanksgiving. But you're right, Jason. This is the time of year when we give back our thanks to you guys, our listening audience. And so this show is going to feature RFR listener feedback, courtesy of our Patreon supporters. We do a show on Patreon called RFR Comlink, which is made up of nothing but feedback from our Patreon community. Well, over the course of the last few months, we haven't really been able to knock out one of those Comlink episodes, so we figured we'd move it into the main show and have a little RFR Comlink takeover of the weekly RFR show. So that's what we're going to do this time around. The show is going to be heavy on Patreon supporter feedback. Some of the best Star Wars fans in the galaxy are members of RFR on Patreon, and we'd love it if everyone in this listening audience joined us on Patreon, because when you look at the numbers, Jason, it's really a very, very small fraction of our overall audience who have joined us on Patreon, who are there with us getting bonus podcasts, full show video, invites to RFR hangouts, and other perks and all kind of great things that go on over at Patreon. So we'd really, really appreciate it if you dove in, supported us. It only takes $1 to get in the door, and you're listening right away. We make podcasts available exclusively to all tiers of RFR and Patreon. Obviously, the higher up in the tier you go, the more perks you get. And RFR VIPs get to host a show called RFR Q&A with myself, and we talk about Star Wars and a whole bunch of other things. This week we have RFR Q&A number 91, Star Wars Trivial Pursuit with the family. So it's a family affair with us on RFR Q&A this week as the Groundrunner family joins me for the whole show. Mark Groundrunner, his wife Steph, and their boys, and some Star Wars Trivial Pursuit cards get pulled out and questions get asked. It's a lot of fun.
What a great idea that Mark had. It's like, well, I want to play Star Wars Trivial Pursuit with the family and Jimmy Mack. What a great way to make that happen.
Well, we don't go quite that far. There's a lot of Star Wars conversation in the episode. It's not all just Trivial Pursuit.
I mean, I picture you like going over to their house and you're at the dining room table. But of course, you're the guest that won't leave, right?
Right. I'm ripping through the fridge, pulling out, bags of cold cuts and cheese.
Yeah, they're like, the game's been over for an hour. And the wife, Steph is like, does he know the game's been over for a while?
As I emerge from the kitchen with a plate and a Dagwood sandwich on it, with all the layers stacked up. Dagwood Bumstead often put little sardines in the sandwich, and that really turned me off. I don't think.
Okay, so I get what you. So Dagwood of Blondie fame.
Yeah.
Okay, see, when I see one of those stacked sandwiches, I think Shaggy from Scooby Doo.
Okay, yeah. He was an aficionado, no question about it.
Sometimes he'd have to put the car jack in his mouth to crank his mouth up wide enough to get the sandwich in, or he might tie a string around it and collapse the sandwich.
Shaggy, Dagwood, and me.
Yeah.
That's going to be the name of my autobiography, by the way, too.
I think it sums it up, right?
Yeah,
there.
really. It'd be my life in sandwiches. and who doesn't love that day after Thanksgiving sandwich?
Oh, man.
Remember how it was so fetishized on that episode of Friends?
Yep.
And
you ate my sandwich?
Yeah.
Because it had the moist maker.
The moist maker. That's what I was trying to think of. The piece of bread soaked in gravy that was right in the middle. I mean, really, really genius. And ever since that episode aired, who hasn't tried building one of those sandwiches themselves with a moist maker and all?
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about the Friends. We're here to talk about RFR and Star Wars and listening to your listener feedback. So before we get into news headlines and all the information revealed in the Empire Magazine cover story this week about Book of Boba Fett, let's dive in and hear from the first of our Patreon supporters.
All right. We want to do this totally at random, right? We're going to spin the wheel?
Yeah.
All right. Spin the wheel. Here we go.
However you like it.
All right. Here we go.
Rebel Force Radio. This is your buddy Blake down here in sunny Florida. My question is about the Book of Boba Fett and the expanding universe and what could be incorporated into the Book of Boba Fett. One of the things from The Mandalorian that's been so rad about it is that they've taken all the sweet EU stuff that from the video games and comics and whatnot and made it live action and canon, which has been so cool to see. So I definitely think they'll be doing that with the Book of Boba Fett. But honestly, I'm not very educated on Boba Fett in the expanding universe. I've read Tales of the Bounty Hunter when I was a kid, but as far as, the comics and all that stuff, I have no clue. I plan on reading all that on the Marvel Unlimited app before the show comes out at the end of the year. But is there anything you guys can recall from the expanding universe and Boba Fett that could be incorporated into the book of Boba Fett? And at the very least, is there anything that you would like to see from the expanded universe that could be in any way, shape, or form incorporated into this show? So look forward to hearing you guys discuss this. The podcast means the world to me. May the force be with you.
Thank you. Well, I think I have a question, Jim, that I want to ask you that I think might kind of help sort of compress. This is a very big question because Boba Fett is a huge figure, particularly throughout the expanded universe. But the question that came to my mind in hearing this question was, has the EU version of Boba Fett ever taken the kind of turn that he's about to take with this series of going into the underworld, trying to take over a crime family or anything related to that? Or is he pretty much stuck to the bounty hunter gig?
Oh, that's a tough question. He's definitely evolved outside of being a bounty hunter in the expanded universe, especially the new Jedi Order era with the Yuuzhan Vong and stuff of that nature. He's actually, Boba Fett himself actually claimed the role of Mandalore and was leading whatever remained of the Mandalorian people by the time of the new Jedi Order, if I remember correctly. And he helped train Jaina Solo in Mandalorian ways so she would be able to fight the Yuuzhan Vong. My memories on that are a little fuzzy, but so he definitely grew out and beyond his status as just a simple man trying to make his way through the universe like his father.
Yeah, because what I'm hearing, and we'll talk more about it here in a moment with some of the Empire Magazine coverage, is that this is all about, like, this series is all about this sort of second career of Boba Fett and the struggles that he's going to have, and what skills as a bounty hunter transfer to this new sort of gangster, for lack of a better term, gangster role that he sees himself in. And what we're reading, I think, is it's fascinating because I had never really considered that this was going to be perhaps an homage to the gangster genre in the way that Mandalorian is to sort of the Western genre. But just some of the quotes that are coming out of this, these previews that we're getting of the Empire coverage, seems to be going that direction.
Yeah, I picked up on that myself. Of course, we'll get into that a little more when we start hearing some quotes from Jon Favreau, et cetera. But as far as what Blake was asking about the expanded universe intersecting with the Book of Boba Fett, one thing I would like to see in this show, and I've said it before, is Boba's escape from the Sarlacc pit. I've always kind of had a vision in my mind about how that would go down. Now, in the book, Tales of the Bounty Hunters, which Blake did read, he'll remember that it was Dengar who came to Boba Fett's rescue as he lay there in the sand after escaping from the Sarlacc. It was Dengar who nursed Boba back to health, essentially. So I wonder if that's going to come into play at all in the Book of Boba Fett.
When you see that lineup of bounty hunters on Vader's ship, Dengar would be last on my list of people that I think would show up to nurse anyone back to health. He's just going by looks. I mean, IG-88, he's a droid, and maybe it helps that we've seen IG-11, so I could see that. I could even see 4LOM jumping in before I could see Dengar. He looks like the most grumpy, grizzled of all of them.
But Dengar has the bandages. So he could just unwrap his head and then wrap up.
Oh, it's what he carries. He doesn't need them. It's storage.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So he doesn't have to carry it around with him. He just keeps it on his head, and people are like, what's up with him?
I know this is not going to happen in Book of Boba Fett, but while we're talking about EU, and I'm nowhere near as read on the EU as Jimmy Mack and many of our listeners. But I do love Shadows of the Empire. I remember that coming out as a kid, or as a young adult, I guess. And just the whole drama that took place of Boba getting Han and Carbonite to Jabba's palace. I don't think it was a smooth ride from Cloud City to Tatooine. I know that's not what this story is about, But that's something I've always kind of fantasized about seeing on screen play out. I'd love to see, even if it was just a flashback or a short or something.
Well, Marvel Comics just wrapped up the War of the Bounty Hunters, which is a new take on Boba Fett's delivery of Han and Carbonite to Jabba. And last time I explained what was going on in that comic book arc, I saw somebody post online that they said listening to Jimmy Mack explain War of the Bounty Hunters was like listening to somebody describe a fever dream.
It took a lot of turns and twists, and all of a sudden, there's Han and Carbonite with Vader again, and Boba Fett's there, and Leia's there, and it's like, it's like
and Kira
waking up, and Kira. It is.
It's pure insanity.
It's either a fever dream or like when Dorothy wakes up at the end of The Wizard of Oz and is explaining, and you were there, and you were there.
You were there, and you were there. That's why you bring up Wizard of Oz. I was putting on my Christmas tree the other day, and Wizard of Oz was on TV, and I was like, this is kind of something nice to keep me entertained while I work on the tree and everything, just to have playing in the background. I've never really associated Wizard of Oz with Christmas, but this year I am.
Well, I've had this debate with some friends where some of my friends remember the Wizard of Oz broadcast, which was always a big deal. Even when I was a kid, it was a big deal. It was on once a year. I always remember it being on around Thanksgiving. I have friends that remember it being on around Christmas. One of us is right, one of us is wrong.
Yeah. I never associated it with any holiday.
Oh, really?
No. Never. But because to me, the Wizard of Oz coming on TV in the 70s was like a holiday in itself.
Yeah.
It was. Families would, that was true appointment television.
Yep.
Wendy growing up, her dad would always buy her those giant lollipops whenever the Wizard of Oz was rerun, so she could sit there and just work that thing over, like cool the Lollipop Guild. Yeah. And that was a tradition for her and her dad. So maybe I'll make it a tradition to put up the tree while Wizard of Oz is on. Usually I prefer to have a sporting event on TV while I'm putting up the Christmas tree, but my teams weren't playing when I was doing it, so Wizard of Oz did just fine.
I do know our mutual pal, David Sparks, Max Sparky, because of The Force Awakens and several subsequent Star Wars movies coming out around the holidays, he gets very Star Wars nostalgic around the holidays. In fact, he and his daughter, regardless of what happened after The Force Awakens, they always watch The Force Awakens together while they're wrapping presents. They've done that for the last 4 or 5 years or so. Do the Star Wars films, do they kind of bring, or do the holidays bring out that itch to put on a Star Wars movie for you, as if you need more of an itch?
Always. The USA Network for so many years made it a tradition to show the original trilogy on Christmas Day. And I think a lot of fans came to make that association with Star Wars and Christmas through that.
I think the point being is that there's something special about a movie, even in the day of home video and streaming and all of that. There's something special about when one of your favorite movies comes on TV.
Yeah, it's like an event.
Yeah.
Because other people are watching the exact same thing you are watching at the exact same time. And so it becomes something that you want to be part of, just to ride that wave of energy.
Yeah. And look at what the streaming services have had to do to recreate that with this watch together features that they have,
For sure. I remember one year I had to work on Christmas morning, like 6 a.m. It sucked.
Did you have kids at that point?
No.
Oh, good. All right. That would really suck.
But I was at work and the Star Wars trilogy was on TV. And so I had it on there with me at work. It was just total comfort food for me on that Christmas morning. It really was. I recall that. We'll see. I'm sure the Star Wars films will be on TV at some point during Christmas, and that'll be a lot of fun to watch. Book of Boba Fett shortly after Christmas, and that'll be a lot of fun to watch. So that starts on the 29th. So we're closing in on 1 month away from Boba Fett.
Man.
And that's going to be a lot of fun.
I think the thing that excites me the most about this, Jim, is in some ways, and it could go either way, is how little we actually know about it.
Know nothing about it.
We really don't know much.
We don't know anything about a cast. We don't know if Dengar's in it. We don't know if Kitster's in it. There's so many different places this series can go. I'm very excited about it, and I'm excited for the merch that'll come out associated with the show, which as action figure collectors, we'll start seeing that trickle out from Hasbro in a couple of years.
Right. They'll be on season 3 of Book of Boba Fett.
It defies logic. But The Mandalorian is starting to pop up more and more in merchandising, I've noticed. And sometimes it pops up in the craziest of places. I was out for barbecue with my family on Friday night. We showed up at the restaurant in waves. First, it was my family, me, Michael, and Wendy, and then my sister-in-law and her friend came. We discovered our table was too small. It was 2 chairs and a booth with a table. And so Wendy says, why don't you let Betsy, my sister-in-law, and Michael share the booth and go grab one of those chairs over there and bring it over here, and you could sit at the sort of the head of the table. And I'm like, all right, cool, whatever. And so I go to grab the chair, and I see something underneath the booth. I mean, it almost called to me. Kind of like, remember in the original Superman when he found that green crystal in the barn and it sort of called to him?
Yes.
Or better yet, let's keep it Star Wars related. When Rey went into Maz Kanata's cellar and she said the lightsaber sort of called to her.
Yeah.
Well, I look under the booth and I see, first I saw a rib bone, which was disgusting. But sitting right next to that rib bone was this.
Whoa!
It's a little baby Yoda. It's a little baby Yoda lollipop dispenser. As you can see, I click down. It opens up.
Oh, geez! He splits right in half from head to toe.
In it.
Oh. You could almost pretend you're like a Darksider, just putting the end to Baby Yoda with the, or better yet, with the dark saber. Just slice him right in half.
So you never know what you might find at a barbecue restaurant that's Star Wars related. Oh, and by the way, this thing has been disinfected too. It's not gonna. I picked it up with a napkin and wrapped it up in the napkin and brought it home and bathed it in antibacteria disinfectant. So it's now part of the collection.
Wow!
And it's a little Mandalorian. And so that's what I'm just saying. Keep your eyes open because there's awesome merch available everywhere, even underneath the booth at a restaurant. But I mean, everyone was just laughing so much because of all the people to find it. It was neat.
Right.
So that's what I mean. It was like the lightsaber calling out to Rey in Maz's cellar. It was just craziness.
Somewhere Steve Sansweet's getting his spidey senses tingling. Jimmy Mack has a Baby Yoda lollipop dispenser.
It is kind of like one of his favorite items is that Jar Jar Binks lollipop dispenser.
Yes, that's right.
The mouth opens up and there's a candy tongue.
It's up there with the 3PO tape dispenser, I think. And,
God, I miss the 90s so much sometimes.
Oh, man. Oh, hey, you know what? Before we go into news headlines, I wanted to mention something we've got here, and I don't want to make too big a deal of this, but we have long been saying that we were going to have our Chut Chut shirts available online for you to purchase, and we thought, hey, why not this week? Black Friday, Cyber Monday, people are looking for holiday gifts. Why not get yourself, drum roll please, RFR Chut Chut shirt, complete with artwork from our good buddy Kevin Lyle. Would you try to describe this? This has got a little sequel trilogy vibe. It's taken after the way that the sequel trilogy title treatments were, which I always thought was a cool look. I remember being a little icy about it at first, and then it started to really grow on me. Go to rebelforceradio.com and you'll see a link to purchase your RFR Chut Chut shirts. They're not in the store proper. You'll see the link on the homepage, and then you will be able to order those. They come in what I'm calling Jimmy Mac Black,
Yeah.
And we've got military green, which we know we got a lot of veterans and current members of the armed forces listening to Rebel Force Radio. So this is a little tip of the hat to you. And it's also just a great color. Love that color. And it really makes the logo pop nicely. We got Swank Heather, because that is my favorite colored t-shirt, the Heather Gray. And then we've got this. I like this one. This is called Storm. It's sort of a blue color, sort of a midnight blue. So these are all available at rebelforceradio.com. I just got a note saying that these will be available on Friday, starting Friday, Black Friday.
Great.
You'll be able to get your Chut Chut shirts. So look for that post on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, as they call it. So you can get a Jimmy Mac Black Chut Chut Rebel Force Radio t-shirt on Black Friday. But these are great. And I really, really appreciate everyone's patience, especially Jimmy Mac's. I think it'll be well worth the wait, but also appreciate Kevin Lyle and lending his design talents for us. So hope you like them.
Yeah. Great job as always from Kevin.
Yeah.
And we know everyone's been wanting those shirts. And we think they'll make great Christmas gifts for Rebel Force Radio listeners in your life. And the best way to have Rebel Force Radio listeners in your life is to tell your friends about the show. So word of mouth is always very important to us as far as advertising goes. We really rely on you guys, and we know you spread the word about Rebel Force Radio. So we just want to thank you very much. You know, as long as we're giving thanks today, right?
Yeah.
It's Thanksgiving.
Right.
Give thanks for all the people who spread the good news about Rebel Force Radio to their Star Wars friends and family. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, it certainly is. And really, especially over the last few years, I think we owe our growth exclusively to word of mouth. It's been the fans that have been have stuck with us over the last couple of years, in particularly, we owe so much to. And it's you guys going out there say, hey, listen to this show. And we see the reviews too. That's why it's kind of a joke at the end of each episode. We say to write a review and make it good and all that, but you have no idea. That helps all the different algorithms of all these different podcatchers, these 5-star reviews. And I think it's pretty fair to say we read every single review that is left of the show. Even the bad ones.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are a little funny, but
yeah, they are. And sometimes they do put us in our place a little bit. I'll have to admit, I'll be like,
well, but
they got a
we
point.
don't want you to, but I don't use the review. And some people will use the review as a way to critique each episode. That's not really what it's for. It's not like, hey, on this week's show, man, you guys were way off. And it's more your general thoughts about listening to the show in general. If you want, show at rebelforceradio.com is a great way to send us feedback per show, or leave us a voicemail. But all right, before we get into your voicemails and voice memos, let's take a look at some of the news headlines.
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
Well, Jim, as you said, not only is Mandalorian merchandise popping up everywhere, but I think soon Book of Boba Fett will be soon behind. Right now, we've got on newsstands, we've got this beautiful cover from Empire Magazine, all featuring the Book of Boba Fett. And Empire Online, over the last couple of days, have been sort of giving us little previews, little teasers of some of the things that we are about to get in the newsstand. And I'm thinking that once the newsstand issue comes out, I think a lot of this content will spill over to the web. Yeah. But I think they don't want to undercut the sales of because they're really pushing. They're even having pre-orders for the newsstand edition. So they're really pushing people to go out and buy the newsstand copy. But so some of the things that we're going to be treated to in this issue. Again, by the way, it should be on sale by the time you're hearing this show. New images, exclusive new images. So when they say exclusive, I'm assuming they mean stuff not seen in the trailer, stuff not seen in the Book of Boba Fett, or excuse me, I always want to call it that, the Boba Fett Under the Helmet documentary. Fresh interviews with Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Robert Rodriguez, plus Tim Morrison, Ming-Na Wen. I think Kathleen Kennedy talks in there too. This is what I was mentioning earlier. They're talking in these interviews about the old school mobster influences.
Yes.
And there was a movie that Jon Favreau was in with Vince Vaughn. What was the name? Swingers.
Swingers. Yeah. You're so money, baby. You don't even know it.
Yeah. And that had, it wasn't really a mob movie, but it took place in Vegas, and there were certainly mob elements and stuff in it. And I'm trying to remember, I feel like Favreau did one other kind of mob type film, or was in, I could be remembering incorrectly, but at any rate, George wouldn't have created a character named Jabba the Hutt that was called a vile gangster, I think, if he wasn't influenced by, just as he was with Westerns and other genres, influenced by gangster films. And, he even, if I remember right, he even equated the end of the end of Revenge of the Sith, where all the Jedi were being wiped out at Order 66, even equated that to the end of The Godfather, when the heads of the five families were all being whacked. Mm-hmm. So if this comes at you initially as, wow, this doesn't, mob gangster doesn't feel very Star Warsy, I think it has had a pretty big influence on Star Wars and George Lucas in particular.
Yeah, well, and of course, George was working with Francis Ford Coppola during the time that Francis developed and shot The Godfather. They were still, I think they were still tight. They had a little bit of a falling out at some point. I think it was after George made a ton of money with Star Wars, or maybe even before that. It might have been when George made a ton of money from American Graffiti.
Did it have something to do with the breakup of Zoetrope?
Yes. Well, Coppola was trying to salvage that company, and he wanted a loan from George.
Oh, this is sounding familiar now.
Yeah, and George refused to do that kind of business with his friend because it might ruin their friendship. And because George didn't do that business with his friend, it ruined the friendship.
Yeah, money will do that, Got to keep the money out of it.
So catch-22,
George, here's the thing. If you give me the money, I'll still be your friend. If you don't, I won't. Okay?
So there was a falling out. And also, I think it was a case of Favreau always being in charge, too. Like he was the dominant one in the relationship.
You mean Coppola?
Oh, who did I say?
You said Favreau. And I'm correcting you. I don't want to interrupt your momentum, but I'm...
No, that's good. That's
you
good.
get mad when I don't, so...
That's good.
Slip of the tongue.
Because I will re-listen to this and hear myself say that and take it out on you. So that is smart. You are definitely, in as far as like self-preservation goes,
okay.
Good move, Swank. Good move. But no, of course, Coppola is who we're talking about. And Coppola always had that dominant upper hand in their relationship because he's the guy who had the established career from the get-go and sort of nurtured George's career to a certain extreme. And so, yeah.
He was like the older brother, you might think. Like the older brother, and then the younger brother is coming up behind and, eventually surpasses in some ways. I don't want to take anything away from Coppola. They're such different filmmakers.
Yeah, they are and they aren't. But Coppola is much more of a hands-on director when it comes to the actors, as opposed to George. And a Francis Ford Coppola directed Star Wars would have been a trip.
Wow.
I think. And I would have loved to have seen it. I would have loved to have seen a Spielberg directed Star Wars. But we'll never see that. Steven, he won't even do Indiana Jones without George Lucas's involvement. And that's really why Steven isn't directing this new Indiana Jones film, is because of his loyalty to George and his friendship to George.
All right. So getting back into this Empire Online coverage, what you're going to be seeing, there was some detail from Jon Favreau about what situation Boba finds himself in with this series. And he explains, he says, there is a power vacuum because Jabba is gone. Jabba was clearly a very strong and imposing leader who people were very scared of and who seemed to rule with an iron fist. You pull somebody like that out of the ecosystem of Tatooine and Hutt space in general, and you have the opportunity that's ripe in the gangster genre. So there's another, reference to gangsters and not just gangsters, but the genre, which I think is key here, that they're going after a vibe, a tone.
Funny how?
And he also mentions, Jim, Hutt space, which makes me wonder if we might actually see more Hutts.
Well, Tatooine is in Hutt space.
Correct.
And that will be made obvious to us in the film. The power vacuum created by the death of Jabba. Will we see Hutts in the Book of Boba Fett? I say absolutely yes, we are going to. That'll be interesting to see a live-action Hutt that isn't Jabba. That's never happened before outside of a brief cameo from Gardula the Hutt in The Phantom Menace. So we're going to be seeing different Hutts. I think that's a pretty big clue for him to be very specific about Hutt space.
Yeah, Hutt space in general.
That's the setting for this series is Hutt space, which means we'll get off of Tatooine, spread our wings a little bit, take the Slave One to another planet. I don't even know what other planets would be in
There's
Hutt
a Hutt
space.
homeworld, and we see that in
Nal
Clone
Hutta.
Wars. Nal Hutta,
Yeah.
right. So we could be going to Nal Hutta. That's a possibility. I mean, I feel like creating live-action Hutts, we've talked about this a lot on the show, is risky business. Live action Hutts is risky business because they've just never gotten it right since 1982.
Well, they're not going to be building out.
No, I know they're not.
Giant Hutt puppets anymore. That's not going to happen. So it's going to be a CGI Hutt. And maybe it's just
improved.
Well, maybe if it's just a Hutt different than Jabba, maybe you'd be a little more accepting of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's possible because none of them look like Jabba.
They all try to replicate that puppet from Empire Strikes Back, but they come up a little short, according to you. I mean, according to a lot of people with eyeballs. I don't think it's that terrible in The Phantom Menace. I didn't think it was that bad.
Well, sometimes I think what the mistake that they make, just armchair, computer special effects guy here. That's all. Sometimes I think the mistake they make is trying to make a real looking Jabba instead of trying to replicate the puppet. I think the more they replicate the puppet, the more we're going to believe that it's Jabba, instead of saying, well, we really want to show you what a CGI Hutt looks like because it's much more realistic than the latex puppet. We're like, but it doesn't look like Jabba. Yeah. Same with, Yoda. Yoda had the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For sure. So maybe some Hutts there in this show. I mean, that's a little hint, a little clue, and I think we should pay close attention to that kind of stuff. Here we are, getting these little teasers a month out. I think we really need to read between the lines with these statements, these carefully chosen statements that appear in this article. Because I'll tell you right now, from what I know about Lucasfilm, they signed off on this article before it was published. They say, we'll give you the exclusive, but we get to sign off on it. And that's kind of like the tail wagging the dog a little bit. But,
that gets into the whole, what is journalism anymore? And journalism and PR. And,
certain things get said. Right. Certain things get said and printed in exchange for access.
Right.
And the presentation is very heavily guarded and controlled. That's it, the control of it all. So really, you think you're reading some article written by journalists, but what you're really reading is a glorified press release.
With pictures.
With pictures.
With
exclusive.
Pictures. Yes.
Exclusive pictures.
One quick thing, because I've always, I've loved real life gangster stories and watched a lot of documentaries and stuff over the years on gangsters. And when I was reading this quote from Favreau about the power vacuum and Jabba with the iron fist, it reminds me of in real world mob times in the Gambino crime family, when John Gotti, who was, sort of a flashy, hot-headed upstart in the Gambino crime family, killed Paul Castellano, who was a much more old school, traditional mafiosa. And that power vacuum is he grabbed power, but yet was really into the glitz and the glamour and playing the role of sort of, the Godfather in the public eye. And you look at the opulence of Bib Fortuna on that throne and everything, and you could see maybe Fortuna being more of a John Gotti character, like more into the look of, being a powerful figure, but didn't quite have the finesse, the nuance to really do it. So I would love to know a little bit more about the reign of, I know this is Boba Fett's story, but I'd like to know a little bit more about the reign of Bib Fortuna too.
Yeah. I have the feeling Bib didn't do anything revolutionary in his role as the head of organized crime on Tatooine. I believe he just tried to maintain the status quo as established by Jabba and milk it for what it was worth. But here you have Boba Fett now riding into town, and he wants to reinvent the way organized crime on Tatooine works. He wants to reinvent the hierarchy and everything about the way that operations exist and how they coexist with each other too as gangsters. Seems like something that's going to be coming into play. So it looks like Boba is going to try to be the one to unite the underworld. That's very ambitious, and I wonder if there's
place where I'm struggling a bit, Jim, is this I feel like they want to have it both ways with Boba Fett. They want to keep him as a fan favorite, but they can't make him go totally legit, totally good guy. So he's got to have this anti-hero thing. So he's going to come in as this wannabe gangster with a gangster with a heart, or, one maybe with more honor, trying to restore honor among thieves. I don't know. It's going to be a tricky thing, because the more he goes all in on his new profession, the less of a hero he really is. And who's the hero of this series going to be if not him?
Right. Yeah. Something that I think was always the most alluring about the character of Boba Fett was the mystery that surrounded him. And that's been spoken about ad nauseum for decades now. So it appears that may be sacrificed with this series completely.
Big time.
If it hasn't been already sacrificed with the Attack of the Clones film or whatever else Boba Fett's been featured in over the years. I think this one really is going to be the project that peels away all the layers of Boba Fett and leaves little mystery about him. So we have to be prepared for that as fans. The evolution of the character.
Well, Rodriguez says,
I'm all for it. It's going to be a tightrope walk to see if they can maintain that mysterious integrity of the character while still expanding upon his story.
Yeah.
I certainly don't want him to turn into the bounty hunter with a heart of gold. That's the last thing I want to see.
We already had that story, and that was Din Djarin's story.
Hello.
Right? Yeah.
We
already had that.
Right.
So now Robert Rodriguez says in here, again, a pull quote, we'll see a lot more of Boba's true character in this season, and you'll definitely see him have to turn barbarian mode. Boba is well and truly back. And I think we know what that barbarian mode is. I mean, when he starts whipping sticks around and cracking skulls, and literally you can hear the cracks and all of that. He knows how to fight, that guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, all indications point to the character being written specifically for Tamora Morrison, which, of course, you can't argue with the logic behind doing something like that,
Yeah.
But it is a character that's been around for a long time. And there are lots of preconceived notions about who that character is, how he operates, and how he behaves. And Barbarian mode, I don't think anybody ever saw Boba Fett quite that way. They looked at him as a cool customer at all times. I mean, if anything, we would compare him to the outlaw Josie Wales, who definitely does not go, or not the outlaw Josie Wales. I'm thinking about the other Eastwood cowboy, the man with no name.
Man with no name, yeah, right.
I always assumed that he was more like that character. I think he was designed to be like that character, like the Eastwood character. And Clint Eastwood from those movies, those movies from the 60s, those Westerns, he was never in barbarian mode.
No, and I'll throw an idea at you. Did the Mandalorian, in a sense, steal Boba Fett's shtick? Because now you have the Mandalorian who is sort of really taken on that mantle of the man with no name, the cool, calm Western style character, and you've got Boba Fett who is whipping clubs around and crushing skulls.
Right. Well, I mean, yes,
little reversal.
But you can't debate with the fact that the Mandalorian also has a heart of gold.
Right.
He does.
True. Correct. Yes.
He does. We don't get the indication he's always been that way, but once he comes into contact with Baby Yoda, he does. I think that might even be the influence of the light side of the Force a little bit too.
Agreed.
Yeah, I've talked about that. How proximity to someone who's really strong in the light side of the Force can actually bring out the light side within you. We've seen examples of this in Star Wars going all the way back to the original trilogy. I mean, it was Luke Skywalker and his connection to the light side of the Force that brought back Darth Vader and redeemed the character of Anakin Skywalker. I'm really down with the whole philosophy of the Force awakening. That was kind of the foundation for what the sequel trilogy was supposed to be about.
Right.
The Force awakening throughout the galaxy. What we're talking about right now could fit into that sort of category. But that concept was really dropped, outside of Snoke saying, there's been an awakening. Have you felt it? That's it. That's really all we get. I mean, we get other indications with Finn, obviously starting to display Force skills, and the whole idea of those stormtroopers in Episode 9 putting down their weapons all at once. That's an example, I think, of the Force awakening. Yeah. But it's as something that's really important to the story. It was never ever really followed up on.
No,
at all.
It wasn't. Yeah. One other quote here I think that's really good when it comes to the character of Boba Fett. And this is from Favreau. He says, although Boba Fett is a very experienced bounty hunter, he's not experienced at running a criminal syndicate or managing forces. He's not normally a newcomer. This is key. He's not normally a newcomer. He's an expert, as we see him in most areas. But in this case, he's trying to transition to another position. So, he's in his second career. Happens to a lot of us. He's retired as the bounty hunter, and now he wants to go full-time gangster. But what you were saying earlier, Jim, about him always being the cool character, well, that comes from a confidence, always knowing, having the head on a swivel, always knowing what's the next move is, or staying a couple of moves ahead of your opponents. And in this case, he's putting himself in a situation where he's not able to do that because he's in unfamiliar territory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might find that running the show ain't the same as being a part of the show. And it could be a distraction to him. I wonder if we're going to see him evolve completely into one thing and then devolve back into the ruthless bounty hunter by the end of the series. You might see a whole ordeal for him throughout. Now, I personally, if Boba Fett's going to change and become something else, I would like to see him stay on that path, because when you think about the sequels, all of those legendary characters, Han, Luke, and Leia, they were all basically right back to where they were at the beginning of the original Star Wars. Luke was by himself alone and, on a place where the action was furthest from. Han was a smuggler in debt, and Leia was running an underground militia. They're all right back to where they were, despite all the evolution the characters go through in the original trilogy. I don't want to see them make that mistake with Boba Fett. If they're really going to go and take the character and reinvent him and make him into something that he never was, make him evolve, then I hope they stick to their landing and they stand firm on that decision, so we get to really see this evolution of the character, not him going one direction and then pulling back and going into his old ways again.
Right.
Then you'll end up watching the series going, well, what was the point of all that in the first place?
When the Mandalorian we first started hearing talk about the Mandalorian series. First, it was just the name of the series, and there was speculation: is it going to be about Boba Fett? There was talk at one point that it might be his series, and then it was clarified, no, it's an all new Mandalorian and all of this. I can't help but think, Jim, that some of this is not solely motivated, but motivated by trying to create more and more of a distinction between these two characters in the Star Wars universe.
Oh yeah, that could be true.
The Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and by let's face it, this could be. And I'm excited about this. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This could be a reworking, a rebooting of the character.
Yeah.
Is what we could be looking at.
Yeah, well, I mean, anytime you try to expand on things, you are essentially rebooting it in a way, because you're turning you're again, I'm going to use that word, evolve. You're helping the characters along with their evolution, and so whatever they become will certainly change our perspective of what they used to be. And you don't have to look any further than a character such as Darth Vader to find an example of that happening in Star Wars. Certainly, in 1977, people considered the character of Darth Vader to be drastically different than the character they were considering in 1983 or 2005, for that matter, post prequels.
Good point. It's worth if you want to chime in, show at rebelforceradio.com. When does something go from when does it go from character evolution to like reboot? I guess it's it depends on how it's handled. Want to hit a couple more things, and then like we promised, we're going to get to the voicemails. So Kathleen Kennedy has an interview in this issue, and she talks a little bit about the set of Kenobi and being there when Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen were reunited. And she said, I won't do her impression. I'll just the thing that was most exciting was being on the set and watching the two of them get excited. The thing that was most exciting was being on the set and watching the two of them get excited. They hadn't seen one another in a long time. I was surprised at just how incredibly emotional it was for each of them to find themselves back in these roles, and just realizing how important Star Wars was to each of them. It was the beginning of their careers. Certainly the beginning of Hayden's career. Ewan had been around. He had done Train Spotting at that point, which was a big hit.
Yeah. It was a small independent film, though, really. I mean, if you want to talk about their careers as major Hollywood forces, then yeah, she's absolutely right with that statement. I saw people nitpicking that comment, specifically talking about Ewan McGregor. And yeah, sure, he acted in a few things, but he really got put on the map with Star Wars. And nothing he had done prior to Star Wars had received any kind of major market attention. It was Train Spotting, independent film. It was small.
Yeah. And he's had a very respectable career, because I mean, I feel like he's an actor that's been able to largely do the projects that he wants to do. And he doesn't do it in a grandstanding way, like, oh, look at me, I don't take these big blockbusters that just get thrown my way. I feel like he has really stretched himself and has done everything from, big budget Tim Burton movie that flopped like Big Fish, which I actually think is a great movie actually, to, the smaller independent films that he's, more known for.
He certainly wasn't typecast as a result of playing Obi-Wan Kenobi, whereas Hayden Christensen was. And
or not cast.
Also, and also, I mean, I think Hayden, and I don't mean to rip on Hayden because I've rewatched Attack of the Clones, and I think his performance is pretty strong in that, actually. But there may have been some chemistry issues with him on screen with other actors, specifically Natalie Portman, that some people may have felt that fell flat. And I think that's really hurt Hayden's career, is the notion that his acting was poor in the prequel trilogy. But, I'll let you be your own judge of that. I used to be harshly critical of Hayden in the prequel trilogy, but I've come around to the fact where I believe that this guy is leaving nothing behind in his trailer when he's out there and he's acting in that garage sequence and all of that. I mean, he really brings in some great acting chops. I just don't know if he was really comfortable in the role. I
wonder. Yes, I think that we've talked about how young he was and inexperienced he was, and those actors tend to need sort of the guidance and the reassurance of the director. And I think a lot of times it fell to the more established actors like Ewan and Ian McDiarmid, who Hayden also grew pretty close to, it seems like, on the set of those films. So he was gravitating towards those that had, the more experienced ones. I actually believe, and I think that there's enough, I've heard enough backstage, behind the scenes chatter that Natalie Portman, as beautiful as she is, and I think she's grown up a lot since those movies. I think she may have been one of the things that was one of the problems in the chemistry department. On set, on screen, off set. I've heard some things.
Yeah. Well,
from a variety of sources. And
she may not have been comfortable herself, when you think
probably not. And do you remember they were trying to whip up, it was so obvious, rumors of a romance between the two of them? Off stage. And it was so obvious when you saw the movie, like there was absolutely no chemistry between these two. There's no way. And then they had I remember when the big Annie Leibovitz photo shoot came out in Vanity Fair, it was like the two of them on a boat, in Italy, cruising to the set where they were doing the wedding sequence and all of that. But it was, there was no chemistry there. What else we got here? Real quick, at the end of... Whoa, is that you?
Sorry.
Oh. Jimmy Mackin.
Can I got to grab this.
You got to take this? Okay.
Hold on one second. Hello. Oh, hi, Nat.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I haven't heard what are you doing for Thanksgiving? Oh, boy. Ooh, yeah. I didn't say that. That was Swank. No, I know.
I was just repeating...
It's true. He always is saying stupid shit.
Just repeating rumors that I had heard. That's all. I wasn't saying anything. I was saying
no, I'm not going to tell him he's an ignorant baboon. I mean, he's my friend. Like that could upset him, and he won't do the podcast with me anymore. We shouldn't do the podcast. That's what you're saying.
She's always been jealous of this podcast. I'll tell you that. Just because she was in Star Wars.
This is just like you. This is just like you. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I believe you. No, I'm not saying that. I won't say it.
Yeah, she doesn't call for what? I don't think we've talked to her since the...
All right.
How's everything there?
Oh, shoot. I left my mic on. You didn't hear any of that, did you?
No. I just assumed, it was one of the kids calling. Everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine.
Oh,
everything was just great. Yeah, that was just... somebody was checking in on my mental health, and
Natalie.
All right. Okay. One other little tidbit here in this article at the very end. It says Kathleen Kennedy is asked about what might happen with the characters of the sequel trilogy. Because there's so much attention between Andor and Boba Fett and Kenobi and Ahsoka. You know, it's the Mandoverse. It's the post-Return of the Jedi era. And she says, certainly those are not characters we're going to forget. What are their names again?
Oh, they remember the names.
Right. I was listening back to the show, last week's show. I believe it was when we were talking about how Kathleen Kennedy hooked J.J. Abrams into Star Wars, into that project by asking, who is Luke Skywalker? And the assumption was that she was just being real deep, about it. Who is Luke Skywalker? But the reality is she was actually asking. She was asking everyone. So who's Luke Skywalker? But she says they will live on, and those conversations are going on with the creative team as well. So, but the damning thing, Jim, is that none of those characters are being, there's no clamor. I shouldn't even say there's clamor, because there is a lot of fan support for, Finn and Rey. They're very, they're popular characters.
Yeah.
But their characters as they were portrayed really didn't leave any loose ends where you're just, the stories weren't told in such a way that you're just dying to find out the next exciting chapter of Rey and Finn and Poe.
I think that there's a foundation for creation of further adventures for those characters. And I think that there was a lot of money spent and time developing them and building them up. But again, the whole thing just kind of got derailed. I think it would benefit Lucasfilm to do something with these characters. It really would. And I think it might help to put a Band-Aid on some of those wounds that some fans are feeling, and even some of the actors are feeling in relation to these characters. We know John Boyega has been very outspoken. He feels like his character wasn't ever developed properly. It didn't carry along the arc that he was maybe promised. I think maybe he feels like he was sold a lemon and he was expecting something else. I just think that they are definitely developing something for his character specifically. I also know Natalie Portman's career hasn't exactly shot up through the stratosphere like maybe she and others were expecting. Oscar Isaac seems to be doing just fine, and his character was the one who was supposed to be.
I think you.
Oh, I meant Ray.
Gosh, if I didn't know better, I think you had Natalie on the brain, Jim.
Well, I'm sorry.
Who was that?
I'm
who was
a little
that
okay. All right, that was Nat. That was Nat.
Okay.
She told me not to tell you, but
well,
I'll tell you.
You did leave the mic on, and we heard.
She was saying, I know, and she was saying some really disparaging things about you. That's why I didn't want to.
No,
bring
she's
it up.
always been jealous of me. She's always been jealous of me ever since that rap party. And, I said, look, I'm a happily married man. And, that's all there is to it.
But yeah, no, I apologize for bringing up her name instead of Daisy Ridley. But I mean, look, I'm visibly shaken by that phone call. Look at it. I mean, I can't hold my.
That's the booze.
I'm visibly. Oh, yes. That must explain the sweating too, right? The booze. Take a flag and a spatchka and knock you upside the head. But no, what I was saying was Daisy Ridley's career hasn't exactly gone into the stratosphere.
No.
And John Boyega, he's also had some troubled productions in the wake of Episode 9. I believe he walked off the set, never to return on one film he was shooting.
Yeah, and the whole movie just tanked. I mean, they wrapped up
the plug on the whole thing.
The plug on the
I
thing.
don't remember what that was, but they say they're going to try to revive that some point next year with a new actor. Boyega might be anxiously looking for a vehicle these days, and we know he said, they're not going to Disney Plus me. Well, I mean,
Disney Plus you.
He only said that 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The landscape has changed drastically, especially in the wake of the pandemic, where theatrical releases
I'm not doing one of those award-winning series. You're not going to put me on millions and millions and millions of televisions across the world. No way.
But I mean, what he's saying, you're not going to Disney Plus me. I'm going to continue with my theatrical career. I'm going to be a movie star, is what he's saying.
Okay.
But
right.
Does that even matter anymore when a lot of movies are going directly to streaming these days?
Right.
Does that even matter?
No.
So it's an interesting environment for bringing back the sequel characters. It's hard to believe that they're going to spend all those years creating this new Star Wars where they prioritized these new characters and then have nowhere for them to go following the release of one trilogy. It seemed like they were settling down on a path that would take them into the future. Mm-hmm. I always think about Michael Arndt when he said, that's the problem with writing Luke Skywalker is because your focus is removed from the new characters because it's Luke Skywalker. But if there was never any desire to have these characters carry on with the franchise beyond the lifespan of the legacy characters, then what are we doing this for in the first place?
Amen. Why not just make it a star vehicle for those original actors and forget about having to establish new leads if you were only going to do 3 more movies anyway in the proper, saga.
Right. I think it's only logical that you will want to continue the franchise with these characters and find something for them to do.
Well, I would say that we need to give it time for the nostalgia to kick in. We need a few more years for the kids who got introduced to Star Wars through these characters, and there are plenty. Think about how many little Kylo Rens and Reys there were when Force Awakens came out that first Halloween. There were a lot of kids that fell in love with those characters. Once they get a little older, they're going to be excited to see them come back. So, I think that's just a reality. Yeah.
I think nostalgia primarily works in 20-year cycles.
Yes, that seems to be the formula.
Yeah. So, if you want to take 20 years from 2015, we're only about 13 years away from a Star Wars sequel revival. But I don't think that anyone wants to wait that long. I think it would be smart to continue the adventures of Rey somehow, maybe show her training Jedi, maybe have history repeat itself, have a dark side student within her midst, and she has to deal with that threat. But this time we actually get to see that happening in a film outside of flashbacks.
Yeah.
And it could end up being kind of compelling and cool. And Lucasfilm could take a lot of the lessons they've learned over the past few years and apply them appropriately if indeed they have been good students and have been taking notes and learned anything about how to treat Star Wars and how to treat the characters, then it might be interesting to see what would happen with the future of... I'll tell you this. I never thought we'd see Hayden Christensen return as Anakin Skywalker. Ever in a million years did I think that would be possible. And now we're going to see him in not 1 but 2 series.
Right.
And we were talking about his acting earlier. It's going to be interesting to see how he is able to embody that character with different directors like Deborah Chow and a different perspective on the entire history of Star Wars at this point.
Well, and
maybe with a little less pressure, because Hayden walked into a pressure cooker with episode 2.
Yep.
Maybe with a little less pressure, maybe with some different direction, we might see an Anakin Skywalker played by Hayden Christensen reach its total full potential that we know it can, because Hayden's a good actor. Let's face it. He is a good actor.
Well, and even though Dave Filoni is not directing, Dave Filoni has a lot to do. He's a producer on this series. And you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that understands the character of Anakin Skywalker as well as Dave Filoni after 7 years of the Clone Wars and learning, everything that he did under George Lucas about Anakin.
with the Ahsoka series. And we don't know. Filoni might be directing every episode of the Ahsoka series.
Well, he's a producer on Kenobi.
Is he? I know that he and Favreau were in a position where they were offering notes, and they're actually the ones who suggested maybe Darth
I'm just
Maul,
assuming.
yes to Vader.
Maybe I'm just assuming that he has a formal role. Maybe it's not a formal role.
I don't think he does. Yeah, I don't think they're tied at the hip to that series, but their knowledge is still getting tapped into by the creatives.
Yeah.
So, and you know, the Star Wars is being made by a committee now, which is still kind of, in my opinion, going through growing pains in the post George Lucas era. But it is committee wars now going on.
This is not a committee. No, I am not a committee. That's the line. Damn it. All right. We want to get to your calls here. Let's see. There's a little bit in here with Dave Filoni talking about writing the Ahsoka series and, what it's like to be working on the series. He says it's thrilling. I got to tell you, it's something you imagine doing for a long time. And then it's kind of startling when you're sitting there and now you have to do it. He says, I thought of this adventure for Ahsoka for a long time. So assuming he's talking about the arc of this series, this adventure for Ahsoka for a long time. And it's interesting to see how it's evolved. Years ago, I never would have imagined that it was sprung from a branch of a tree that had anything to do with a guy like Din Djarin or a child that looks like Yoda. It's a great lesson for me on how when you have other creatives like Jon Favreau, they can help lend such dimension and depth to what you're doing. So Jim, very Filoni here. It's a story we know he never stopped thinking about Ahsoka, no matter what he was working on. That's a character that very near and dear to his heart. Of course, he helped co-create it with George Lucas. He had this story kicking around. Now all of a sudden he's found a way to interweave it with subplots of The Mandalorian, as well as, he doesn't mention it in this interview, but assuming Rebels as well.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing with Dave Filoni in considering these adventures for Ahsoka, I think he'd always been sort of thinking about this story, considering the possibilities with the character within the realms of animation. And now he's intersecting it with the live-action Mandalorian show. And that to him is a surprise. And he's collaborating with people on this story that he never thought he would be. So his story about Ahsoka is going through some twists and turns itself that is surprising to Filoni. Yeah. It's the creative process. The creative process is allowed to breathe and thrive in this particular environment. And I like the fact that these series are being developed via the seed of an idea. It's not just we have to have a Star Wars project in the works.
Yes.
So we need to find something. These are actual ideas that are being nurtured throughout the production process into the final series. And the Star Wars films themselves never had that luxury. Sure, Lucas was working on it with Michael Arndt by the time he sold the company, but they went back to square one after they jettisoned his ideas. And since that time, it's been nothing but untitled Star Wars film on the schedule with no idea.
With no idea. Man, that is so true. Wow.
Deadlines being set with no cast, no crew, no director, no script, no outline.
Just a reservation in the theaters. That's all it is. Just a reservation.
Not even the germ of an idea.
Right.
It's just two words, Star and Wars. That's all they got. That puts the creatives under the gun immediately. Filoni, he's been nurturing this idea for a long time, and now he has been able to take this idea, pitch it, and make it become part of this Mandoverse that's being created, which is never the vehicle he was considering for Ahsoka back when he initially started thinking of all these ideas.
Yeah, I remember we thought it would be cool if Dave Filoni helped write an Ahsoka novel. I mean, that's what we thought the future of Ahsoka was going to be told after Clone Wars was canceled and all of that. Never would we have dreamed any of this. Hey, I do want to throw this on. It wasn't on the rundown, but we should mention that Variety says that they have confirmed, the Lucasfilm hasn't confirmed it, that Natasha Liu Bordizzo has been cast as Sabine Wren in the Ahsoka series. And, this comes from Variety. They do mention that reps for Lucasfilm and Bordizzo did not immediately respond for comment, but they're saying that they have confirmed with sources that Natasha Liu Bordizzo, and just looking at the picture, Jim, I think it's real. I don't know anything about this actress at all, but I think it's good casting from a physicality standpoint. She's got those, big, beautiful brown eyes like Sabine does, and we'll see what happens. But Sabine Wren, this should have surprised no one, confirmed as being a character in the Ahsoka series. And I believe that Natasha has I think she has some martial arts or maybe some combat background. Yeah. So
I looked into her background, and she's a Taekwondo expert. She trained in Taekwondo in her teens and achieved black belt status. She was in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Sword of Destiny, which is a follow-up to the original Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which we know was revolutionary for the way in which cinematic martial arts are portrayed. She's very sporty, rides horses, figure skates, but it's that degree in martial arts that she doesn't have a degree in martial arts, but she studied
certified.
She had a black belt.
Yeah,
she's certified black belt. She is from Australia. So she's from Sydney. So following in the long history of Star Wars actors who came up from Australia and New Zealand, because, of course, episodes 2 and 3 were shot in Sydney. So that's why you had so many Australian actors working on Star Wars. And Natasha joins those ranks. It seems like a good pick to me. I've never seen anything she's been in. I've never seen her act. I did like the original Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and never came across the sequel to it before. So that might be something worth taking a look at.
Is it like a full motion picture sequel, or is it like an animated thing? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, no, it's a whole thing.
Oh,
it's
okay.
a whole
I didn't
thing.
realize that. Oh, we had talked about, this is sort of a correction. We had talked about the announcement on the investors' call that confirmed that Andor was going to air in the fourth quarter of 2022. There was some clarification that they're talking about fiscal quarter 2022, which would be sometime between July and September 2022. And Jim, I know you've been kind of keeping track of these dates in your head. So if I got this straight, we're looking at Boba in December, January of 2021, December going into early 2022. Then we know you've speculated that we're going to get Kenobi in May of 2022.
May the 4th.
For May the 4th.
That's my prediction for when the Kenobi series will drop. And that's, 6 to 8 episodes, something like that?
Yes. Which then, with this confirmation that Andor will be like, a August, September, Q4 fiscal 2022. And then we've speculated that Mando season 3 would likely be about a year from now in December 2022. So does that mean that the only clear runway I see for a Bad Batch season 2 might be after Book of Boba Fett? Could we see it as early as like March, early spring? Bad Batch season 2?
That's when I thought Bad Batch season 1 would drop, because that's when the Clone Wars season 7 dropped, was in March. Actually, I think it was in late February 2020. I don't think they're going to follow it up with a May 4th premiere. I think it's going to be before.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be before. I think we'll hear about that in early spring, March.
So Boba, Bad Batch season 2,
yes.
Kenobi,
yes.
Andor,
yes.
Mando season 3, Ahsoka.
Yes. Ahsoka
because the other thing
in 2023.
Yes, the other thing that they mentioned in this, did they actually say 2023 in this? But they do confirm it'll be after the third season of The Mandalorian.
Right.
So season 3 of Mando may set up much of what we see in Ahsoka.
Yeah, I think they'll be intertwined.
Yeah.
I think that. Oh, I have one other note. about the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon sequel. Mm-hmm. It stars Donnie Yen.
Oh,
Donnie Yen is in it. So, I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan and you want
cheer it.
Any other, yeah, cheer it. There he is. You almost shot me. You're welcome. That's my favorite. It's so funny that we've been making little jokes about Rogue One here on the show and doing impersonations of Saw Gerrera and everything. Paul Gullet. Even jokes about Paul Gullet. When I was watching Rogue One in the theaters with Billy Mack and the Babu Freaks last week, there were laughter in parts of the film where I don't think traditionally there is laughter. Like everything that Forrest Whitaker said, everything that came out of his mouth, Billy was laughing at because I knew he was thinking about the Saw Gerrera talking doll.
Paul Gullet can feel your thoughts.
Which, by the way, is going to be discounted for Black Friday doorbusters, the Saw Gerrera talking doll.
Boys! Deceptions!
And I knew Billy was thinking about that throughout all of Rogue One. Very distracting.
It's hard
Very
not to.
distracting.
You've memed it, Jim. You have made Saw Gerrera a meme.
Yes.
And so when you watch it, you can't stop thinking.
Another one of my memes is the blow the Death Star up at midnight.
Hey, that'll be coming up.
Eve.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming up. And hey, don't kid yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. I am the one who started that tradition. Now I'm seeing all kind of crazy crap for you to time out. So you have a moment at the stroke of midnight. And the most recent one I saw had to do with the movie Die Hard. Die Hard with Bruce Willis.
I've been trying to make that a Christmas movie for years now.
Right. Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
Yeah.
That's what we say around my house every Christmas. So if you begin Die Hard at 9:57 and 10 seconds on New Year's Eve, Hans Gruber will reach the ground floor at the Nakatomi Plaza at exactly midnight to ring in the new year. Wow. Are you telling me that competes with the glory and grandeur of the Death Star exploding at midnight? Hell no, as Baby Yoda would say on Saturday Night Live. Hell no. And Baby Yoda was on Saturday Night Live again this week.
Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade will feature several exciting new balloons, including star of The Mandalorian, Grogu, a.k.a. Baby Yoda. Here to comment is Baby Yoda.
Yeah, boy, is back. What up, New York City?
It's great to see you again, Baby Yoda. Now, you're going to be a parade balloon. You must be excited.
Bro, I'm getting paid $2 million to kick it with Pikachu, Ronald McDonald, and the dude from Diary of a Wimpy Kid on live TV, high as hell. Woo-hoo! That life's a movie, son!
It sounds like fun. So you got any other fun Thanksgiving plans?
Hell yeah!
Or hell yes, as he may sometimes. But okay, so long story short, just blow up the Death Star at midnight. Quit wasting your time with Thanos' snap and Hans Gruber and all this dumb stuff you do. Just blow up the Death Star at midnight. It was not meant to incite the pop culture society.
Oh,
to
poor
find
ripoffs.
Yeah, really. Knockoffs, bogus stuff. People are always writing me and telling me things like, yeah, well, what about Star Killer Base? That explodes. No, it's not the same.
No, it's not the same.
And so this is my tradition, and it has gone viral, and people have a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad they do. It was just some silly idea I came up with when we had our first son, and he was baby, and the realization dawned on me that we're staying home on New Year's Eve for the rest of our lives, and I needed to find something exciting to do at home. So I used to do this with VHS tapes, guys. VHS tapes, trying to time it out just perfectly at midnight. And that's difficult to do because the VHS tapes, they stretch, certain machines run at different speeds than others. So even the slightest millisecond of a difference can make a huge difference when you're trying to get to a certain part in the film, down to the exact second. But now with the rise of digital video and even DVDs made it 1,000 times easier to make this happen. But that's how it all started, guys, back in the days of VHS. And it's caught on like crazy. And it's become so established that now when I say I'm the one who invented it, a lot of people doubt me. Because, listen to him just blowing smoke. He didn't invent that. But I understand what Richard Lewis is going through because he's always trying to claim ownership of the blank from hell comments. This is the podcast from hell. Richard says he invented the blank from hell saying. And people always want to challenge him on that.
Yeah.
I think my case is stronger, actually, for inventing the Death Star blowing up at midnight. I think I have a stronger case. But there you have it. We'll be posting up all the instructions for that as we get closer to New Year's.
All right, let's do it. Let's get into some of our calls and our voicemails and our voice memos right now, as we give thanks to you, the listeners, and in particular, our Patreon supporters.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Hey Jason, hey Jimmy, this is Adam Driver. This is not one of your amazing Patreon members and Rebel Force Radio listeners like the Via Cashers. Nope, it is Adam. Thank you for the lovely things you said about me last week on your show. I wanted to Forcecast or Force Skype podcast? I don't know. Anyhow, I got angry again, so I didn't want you to see me with my ripped off shirt. And you know how it is when I'm out of my element. Well, I'm on the set of Mandalorian Season 3, so I have to... You can't say that. No, I can't. No. Uh-oh. Well, it seems I have to go. But for the week of Thanksgiving, I want to express my thankfulness for Rebel Force Radio. Gobble, gobble, chut, chut, Adam Driver, out.
Oh,
man.
That's great. I knew he had the voicemail number. I didn't know Adam was a Patreon supporter, though, so that makes me feel very excited. And,
that is exciting. Yeah. Well, you would consider all the time that he's on movie sets. He's got all that downtime, and so he needs all that extra content from.
He gets held prisoner in hotel rooms at Comic Cons, where he's not allowed to leave the room. He needs something to kill those hours. And so he listens to RFR, and that's what really keeps him connected to Star Wars more than anything these days. So great to hear from you, Adam, and thank you so much for listening.
You never know who's listening. Natalie Portman, 1 minute. You got Adam Driver.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Jimmy. You guys have been talking about revisiting Attack of the Clones, and I just wanted to chime in and say it is absolutely my favorite Star Wars film outside of the original trilogy, specifically for nostalgic reasons, though I'd say The Phantom Menace is objectively the best of the prequels. When I was 11, Attack of the Clones came out, and my family was in Walt Disney World for those amazing Star Wars weekends, and we thankfully got tickets ahead of time to see it at that big AMC multiplex in downtown Disney. After waiting outside for a couple hours in a thunderstorm, we got to see it in a packed theater. The audience was going wild the whole time. It was incredible. And even though my mom, she's a big fan of the OT, and she doesn't care too much, she sort of checked out on the prequels with the story and some of the acting stuff that you guys have talked about. But she completely agrees that George Lucas, the design and ILM and the world building was second to none in the prequels. She's a big Art Nouveau person, and I gotta say, after the Millennium Falcon, still her favorite ships are the Naboo Starfighter and the Queen Amidala Nubian Starfighter. So thanks, guys. Love the combo. Take care.
Oh, thanks, man. And cool to get your mom's feedback as well. Jim, I go back to when we were at Celebration Chicago when we were watching those clips of Phantom Menace on the big screen, and we both looked at each other and we're just like, they just don't make movies like this anymore. And the world building that went on, just when you think George couldn't top himself in terms of that, I think he did really aesthetically. as far as particularly if you look at the design elements in the world building that he did in the prequels, it was tremendous. Tremendous.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Well, that was really, the prequels were George Lucas unleashed, where anything he thought of, he could make happen. And that's the only time we really saw him be able to display that with live action Star Wars. And the result was incredible world building, amazing Art Deco, and incredible aesthetic. It really enriched the entire galaxy, in my opinion, which I was, at the era of the sequels or the prequels, I was really, really hungry for an expansion of the world building of Star Wars.
Yeah,
that's the prequels nailed it.
To the point where George even questions himself in that screening room. I think I may have gone too far.
Yeah. Oh, you think? But I agree with him. I think the sequel, God, quit doing that. I think the prequels have aged gracefully. I think they are stronger films now than they were back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I love her caller because he was 11 years old waiting in line to see Attack of the Clones with his family. And that has created a really strong memory of childhood for him. Mm-hmm. Now that caller is 30 years old talking to us. And if he hasn't reached 30 yet, he's 29. So I think that's absolutely incredible to hear listeners and hear their stories about when they were kids during the prequel era, because that whole perspective is completely lost on me. I was 30 when The Phantom Menace came out. So I didn't have that wide-eyed, youthful, innocent look at the prequels. I was coming in there with my baggage, my personal baggage, but I was so hungry and so excited for Star Wars. I fully accepted and embraced the prequel trilogy, probably in a way that might be foreign to my contemporaries who were real sticks in the mud about their unflinching attachment to the original trilogy. I was more primed for it because I spent all those years reading Star Wars books and comics. So I was used to different takes on Star Wars. So when it came back to George Lucas's turn to expand the galaxy, I was so hungry for it.
Yeah. I remember a conversation I had not long ago with Chase Norton. The prequels were his Star Wars. He was just a little kid when those were coming out. So when he thinks vintage, that's to him, those red carded action figures from Phantom Menace, when those came out and were re-released on Black Series and all that, that was his nostalgia trip. That was his vintage. Qui-Gon Jinn, Eopes, Geonosis, all of that, that's his Star Wars. And I respect that. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I wanted it that way for kids of that era. I wanted them to have a taste of the thrills that I had as a kid, searching for action figures on the pegs during the original trilogy era. And so I take great comfort in knowing that the youth of the 90s and early 2000s shared a similar experience. And that's really what it was all about. I mean, I was super nostalgic for Star Wars throughout the prequel era. Just, I couldn't believe it was back and so vibrant and so active after the years on the shelf. Yeah. And that was what was most exciting about the prequel era for me, quite honestly.
Even if the story, maybe was not quite up to our expectations in some ways, in fairness, I think we would have liked to have seen all that effort tell perhaps a different take on the same story. That's way. I don't think the story was off. I think we really could have started with a teenage Anakin Skywalker and seen more of what we saw in the Clone Wars on the big screen and some of that stuff, and really seen his fall rather than it happening mostly off off camera.
Yeah, I think that most of us expected that.
Right.
And we didn't quite get that, but it certainly fleshed out the background and did what it set out to do, was provide the origin of Darth Vader, and it did just that.
Yes.
It might have just taken some different paths to get there that some old school fans would have preferred, but here we are again. We were talking about the sequel era earlier and when nostalgia might kick in for that, and it's that 20-year period when things really start to come full circle. And here we're there right now with the prequel era. And it's really beginning to show, because you're starting to see Disney actually embrace elements of the prequels via marketing. And now with shows like Kenobi, we're seeing it. They're bringing back Hayden Christensen in the fold to play Anakin Skywalker. That's huge. That is so monumental in the trail of Disney accepting Star Wars, as they, because at first they didn't, the Star Wars prequels, at first they didn't want to have anything to do with the prequels. I used to say Disney had prequelitis, and it was 1,000% true.
You invented that too? The prequelitis? I've seen that other places.
I used to say that about Disney. I don't know if I invented that actual term, but that was one of the first things I had heard from people in the know when Disney acquired Star Wars. The people in charge do not like the prequels, so don't expect any expansion of those stories.
They're not all that wild about the original trilogy either.
Well,
it depends on what you mean by in charge. The executives in charge are okay with anything that makes money, but the storytellers in charge, they have a different idea, I think.
Yeah, I just heard Disney suits.
Yeah.
So
they were scared off. I mean, I know too that the toy industry was just completely scared off of Star Wars after they were, just buried under cases and cases of Episode 1 merch.
There's their own greed. They overproduced all that stuff because they thought they were going to sell all of that stuff. They're the ones who overestimated all of that. Their market forecasting was in the toilet. And so that's, especially in relation to Jar Jar Binks action figures. And I have seen Hasbro get burned time and time again. When are these guys going to learn? Last time I was in Best Buy, I haven't seen Star Wars action figures, Black Series or 3 3/4 inch on the pegs in the last few years. But I went into Best Buy and they must have had 50 Jar Jar Binks Black Series action figure. That's the only Star Wars item they had in the store. And I'm like, here we go again. Jar Jar Binks peg warmer. He was a peg warmer.
Was it the one?
Will be.
Was it the one on that vintage Phantom Menace red card?
No, it was in a black box.
All right.
I think it was in a black box because the black box.
They released it both ways. Yeah, they released it.
I see. Yeah, if it was on the red card, I might have stopped to take a closer look at it and inspect it. But it was just in that typical Black Series black box. It's boring, and so I just kept moving. But I'm like, Jar Jar Binks action figures clogging up the pegs again. When the Phantom Menace 3D came out, Jar Jar Binks action figures clogging up the pegs. And then, of course, most notoriously in 1999, when they were overproducing that character to death, so much so that there's a landfill somewhere in Colorado filled with Jar Jar Binks action figures. It's like the E.T. Atari cartridges.
Yeah, they're right next to it.
It's that kind of thing, that sort of poor market forecasts. Their consumer predictions were way off. And how many times is it going to happen in history? I've counted 3 times when Jar Jar Binks has completely derailed merchandising and marketing. And hey, don't get me wrong, I'm no Jar Jar Binks hater. I always like Jar Jar Binks, but if you don't pay attention to history, you're doomed to repeat yourself. And that's what Hasbro keeps doing, is they keep repeating their failures in that department.
Hey, Jason and Jimmy. This is Philip in Minnesota. Thought I'd contribute a little bit to the Mandalorian discussion. Just a frivolous note on use of boats in Star Wars. I think it makes sense when, repulsor technology might be a little bit out of reach to some of the lowlier denizens of the galaxy far, far away. And so, simple fishing enterprise probably use boats just because they're cheaper, more reliable out on the open water, that type of thing. If they are hiring Quarren, just as employees on this fishing vessel, they'd be giving them standard issue waiters. So, I mean, unless Quarren are native to this planet, I don't know if it's supposed to be set on Mon Cala or what. I don't think so, though. And then, the issue of, Pedro Pascal wanting more screen time, potentially causing a rift between him and the production. That'd be very unfortunate if true. I don't see why, though, they wouldn't just write him more screen time, considering he's developing camaraderie with characters outside of his Mandalorian guild, and hopefully coming to realize that, that whole keeping the helmet on aspect of his covert is really not in keeping with greater Mandalorian culture from what we know of Mandalorian culture. I mean, hopefully it's not something that, Jon Favreau is just in the dark on as a new kind of initiate to the Star Wars canon. Hopefully he knows all the backstory that Dave Filoni had developed he's got Dave Filoni as his first lieutenant on this whole show. So hopefully they have a good explanation for why they would want to keep Pedro Pascal's face covered. And if not, hopefully that gets resolved. Otherwise, look forward to hearing your show.
All right. It's all the stuff about the boats and the Mon Cal and all of that. I totally buy. I think we were talking about when those episodes aired, that it's well, if they have all this great technology, why would they be using kind of rudimentary fishing techniques? But Philip brings up a good point about the economics of it, and that it would just be a lot cheaper and more reliable to use boats rather than, some of the other technology that might be available to them.
And maybe that technology scares off the fish.
When I went out with my grandfather, he had to be very quiet. Now I realize what that was all about. It's just about keeping me from yapping. But he's like, yeah, buddy, you're going to scare the fish away, So maybe that's what it is. But, and we also think about, fishermen in the idea of going fishing, even commercially. You're out there, you're in the elements, and it's a way to get closer to nature. And I would see that, you wouldn't necessarily want to take a big, ship out into the waters. And I don't know. It works for me. It works for me.
Just the natural element of fishing is to create that sort of relaxing environment for you to sit there and cast your line and stuff. So I don't think that's really lost on the characters of Star Wars either.
Right.
Even if they are commercial fishing, it's not like they're just sitting back there, having a cigar and casting their line with a cold beer in the cooler. They are commercial fishermen.
Right.
But yeah, that all makes sense, of course. And yet you have to keep Star Wars storytelling grounded in a certain sense of earthly realism. Throwing a couple monsters in there and a few squids wearing waders, and we're in the Star Wars territory.
As long as they don't have buttons, mate. No buttons on those waders.
That's where we draw the line.
Paul Bateman. But let's talk about Pedro Pascal, because what Philip is he's thrown a lot out there, and he's questioning, hey, you've got this actor, and he's established the character through a couple of seasons now. Why not let him take off the helmet? And was this helmet thing a symptom of Jon Favreau not necessarily knowing the lore? Blah 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 blah. I think that it's a simple case of the actor was signed to do this gig. This was the gig, and because the show got incredibly popular, and perhaps he was worried about being upstaged by a puppet, he wants more on-screen time. He wants people to think of it as the Pedro Pascal show. And that was never what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be the Mandalorian. Jim, getting back to what we were talking about earlier about mystery and the man with no name and all of that, to the point where the character was the costume, not the guy underneath. right? You didn't see Dave Prowse going around saying, this would be a lot better if I could take my, well, I'm doing James Earl Jones, but you know what I mean. This would be a lot better if I could take my helmet off. And then you're like, yeah, we will, but it's not going to be you. It's going to be another actor, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying that that's part of being a Star Wars actor, is a lot of times it's done under the helmet. The other thing too is I think it's done largely because the show, they were imagining a show with a great deal of physicality, a great deal of stunt work, and they probably weren't going to get that from, an on-screen actor. So you need to be able to do some of those things, and having the character helmeted opens up so many doors. Just my take.
Yeah. There's a lot of word out there that Pedro is not happy portraying the role with the helmet on all the time. For the large part, he can't really move around very well with the helmet on. They have to rely on stunt guys whenever the Mandalorian is moving, essentially. But I think the groundwork has been laid for season 3, where we're going to be seeing more Pedro Pascal on camera, really, because he's getting over the whole helmet thing. And what's incredible is that Boba Fett was a character that was all about the helmet and all about the armor. And it seems like he's going to be largely portrayed helmetless in the Book of Boba Fett show. When he's not in action, it appears we'll be seeing Tom Morrison quite a bit. So I can see that happening in The Mandalorian as well. After last season, where he was seen without his helmet on by several people, and the desire of the actor then combined with the developments and the character developments and evolution, coming to the point where he's really questioning a lot of the dogma that's been laid on him about being a proper Mandalorian that was already being challenged by Bo-Katan earlier in the season. On that fishing boat, as a matter of fact.
Right.
She was telling him about the children of the watch and all that stuff.
Right.
While her face was fully exposed, still wearing Mandalorian armor, and nothing bad was happening to her. But that's not what it's all about. It's not all about, oh, you're cursed if you take off your helmet. It's devotion to faith is what it actually is. But the faith may be a little misguided. And I think as Din Djarin gets exposed to Mandalorians who live their lives in accordance to Mandalorian law, but don't have to deal with rules and regulations like keep that helmet on at all time, that might be something that helps the Mandalorian grow as a character and become less of a member of this group and more of an individual himself. And with that individuality comes more exposure of his face.
Yes.
So I'm predicting we definitely will see more than just little glimpses of Pedro Pascal in season 3.
And I think they're taking the character to places, Jim, where you may need that human face to really continue telling these stories, or telling the evolution of that character.
Mm-hmm. And if Baby Yoda is not a presence in every episode like he had been in the first 2 seasons, I think we're going to have to turn the spotlight on the Mandalorian himself a little bit and get to know him more as a person. And it's really hard to do with him keeping that helmet on at all times.
Great point. Because you had so much expression coming from Baby Yoda.
Right.
And so much character jumping off the screen that Mando being kind of, not that he was in the background, but he wasn't just popping off the screen at you, was okay.
A lot of his reactions to Baby Yoda is what gave him the character. And now if you remove Baby Yoda from that, then something has to be done to make the Mandalorian more human and more empathetic and more relatable. Just downright relatable. Kind of need that.
You do. And I know that, sometimes I even myself say, Pedro's really just a voice of the character. But, as we once said to Anthony Daniels, Jim, I think it was you in an interview, and it really took him aback when you credited him for one half, at least, of the character of R2-D2. Yeah. And we talked to Mark Hamill once about him being sort of half of Yoda. and how credible he made Yoda. Well, Mandalorian or Pedro Pascal is doing that, but he's doing it in a lot of cases with just his voice.
Yes.
You talk about reacting to Baby Yoda. So and yet the magic works. The magic works.
Yeah. We build a connection to him on a human level through his actions and his connection to Baby Yoda. But really, we don't get any sense of emotional reaction from the Mandalorian at all. Mm-hmm. And I think those things are going to be necessary to help the character move on. And the only way you can really do that is to have the character go sans helmet. Yeah. And so finally, I think Pedro's going to get his wish in season 3 of The Mandalorian, and we're going to see much more of his face.
I don't want him to go full on, emotional and stuff though too. I like sort of the stoicism that the character has, and a lot of time, like we were talking on the, on Bondcast about some of my issues with maybe an overly emotional Daniel Craig in the last movie. But all right, what do we? Oh, Alex from Cleveland. This is exciting.
Hey guys, it's Alex from Cleveland. I'm the one who called about being a closeted Star Wars fan and being afraid to tell my girlfriend how into it I am, to the point where I read all the books and comics and listen to a Star Wars podcast multiple times a week because of all the great Patreon content. So I have not... Well, let me start off by saying I'm really appreciative of you guys taking the time to not only give me all that amazing advice, but to feature me on your Best of Patreon show. Thank you. That is awesome. You guys are the best of my Patreon. Well, you're the only Patreon I'm subscribed to, but if I subscribe to more, you would be the best of that. And I wanted to follow up a little bit to let you know that I have not had the courage to open up more about my Star Wars interests, and it's been working okay for me. We're still together, which is great, and I just kind of do it on my own time. It's nice. I don't have to wait for anybody to watch The Mandalorian. I can just wake up and watch it. I actually watch it while I'm driving to work sometimes, like Jason does.
Oh my God!
But I thought you guys
You're a bad influence, Swank.
As much as I try to keep my Star Wars obsession secret and keep it away from her, because I don't want her to get freaked out or anything like that. I was caught red-handed the other day when I was very sleepy. I have a tendency to talk in my sleep. And when it's in that sort of twilight falling asleep phase, you can have a full conversation with me. And she sent me a recording of her talking to me, and I accidentally started talking Star Wars. And this is really embarrassing. And I'm giving you guys this exclusive Alex from Cleveland audio for you to play on the show, hopefully. And here it is. It's about 50 seconds long. Sorry to take up so much of your time. Thanks for all the great content. And here's the audio clip. It's horrible. It's embarrassing, but it's funny, I hope. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
I don't understand, though. People have Zappos boxes everywhere.
Yeah, most people collect that, but neither do Yoda hate it. What do I want them to do with that? I even hate what it is right now. I'd throw it away.
I don't know what you mean.
What? Baby Yoda.
What does Baby Yoda have to do with Zappos?
Well, he's the meme, and they make him with everything.
Zappos?
Yeah, he's really cute, and they just put him with everything. If you order something for a certain price, they could just give you the cute little Baby Yoda and just drop by, enjoy this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it sucks. What am I gonna do with that?
I'm sorry.
He's cute, but I want him to be real.
Oh man!
Is that his last? Was that his final thought? There was. He's
think
cute,
so.
but I want him to be real.
He's cute, but I want him to. Don't we all? Don't we all?
That was great.
Real?
And listen. When he was setting it up, I thought, oh, this is going to be some phony thing with him and his girlfriend trying to put us on here, but I can tell.
Yeah.
By that recording that was 1,000% legitimate.
Yeah.
That he does talk in his sleep. And I would love to have him on the show, but not awake. I only would want him to be asleep. I don't know how we can arrange this, but that would be incredible.
Somehow I can put a couch back here, we can do like a little, hypnosis thing or something. I don't know.
Hypnosis.
Guest. Yeah.
Hypnosis. Then we'll get to the bottom of everything.
Yeah, he's a local.
I think what's happening. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And sometimes we do live shows from downtown Cleveland, and we could get him on stage for one of those and
get like a Kreskin or somebody to come in and do the hypnotism live hypnotism with Alex from Cleveland.
See, that would really be pushing podcast boundaries. And I'm totally on board for something.
The radio guy inside Mac, he is just going nuts. Like this is radio stunt 101, baby.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have been involved in shows where some hosts would get hypnotized.
Oh.
And I never have been able to be put under or anything like that. They can't get me. I'm a bad participant in hypnosis. I'm not good for that. I think I suffer from too much cynicism to be put under, but some people are very susceptible to that kind of thing, the power of suggestion, what have you. And I've seen it in action. It's weird. But I think that we could get to the root of some issues here if what's that caller's name again?
Alex.
Alex, that's what I thought. Alex from Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if I could give Alex any advice, just be yourself, say it loud, say it proud, 24/7, 365 days a year. Become known as the Star Wars guy, and she will love you for that because you are exhibiting a passion and a loyalty. And that says a lot about your character.
Yes.
And I think if she's looking at you to share a future with you, she certainly doesn't want any surprises 5-10 years down the road. The thing I don't understand with Alex is what is he afraid of? Was she a Star Trek fan? Is she a Trekkie? It's not going to work. You guys are incompatible? Or she thinks science fiction, things like that are dumb. I think Star Wars is so universally known and liked and accepted by people of all different walks of life, it doesn't really have that nerdy stigma attached to it anymore.
I agree. I think that there's a big difference between keeping something private and yours and also keeping something secret. And it sounds to me like you're trying to keep Star Wars as a secret, not just keeping it as your thing. The difference being that she'd know about it. She'd know how into it you are, but it's not her thing, but it's your thing and she appreciates it for what it is. And as long as it doesn't interfere in the relationship in some adverse way, you're in good shape. I'm not comfortable, Alex, you keeping this as a secret because I don't think good relationships are built on secrets.
That's right. That's right. I do know of a Patreon VIP who I've done RFR Q&As with, who's also had to lie to his spouse. He's married, and he couldn't tell her that he was doing a recording of RFR Q&A with me, so he told her he had to do a Zoom call for work. And I was afraid if she walked in on the conversation, I would suddenly have to jump into shop talk for whatever job he has to do.
Did you get those TPS reports? The last one was...
Yes. Please forward them to me in duplicate if you can. I agree with you, Jason. I think it's always important to be true to who you are and spend your time the way you want to without fear of judgment or repercussions from anyone. And I also think that your significant other might find it to be absolutely endearing that you have such a passion for Star Wars. And I mean, she certainly seemed bemused by your Baby Yoda sleep talk. So,
I mean, luckily, Baby Yoda, I mean, if you were going to sleep talk about something, to a partner that had no idea you were into Star Wars. Baby Yoda's the right thing to sleep talk about because it was everywhere. It was everywhere.
Yeah. The last thing you want to be talking about is Carrie Fisher in a metal bikini. That's not going to fly at all.
I want her to be real. She's so cute. Oh, man. All right. Let's see here. Let's go to our next call.
Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars folks. How you doing? It's Dusty Hawk here from Nottingham in the UK. So I've got a question or a couple of questions. So let's call it a two-parter. Part one, after watching the releases on the Disney Plus Day, we saw a few days ago, I just wanted to ask, how excited are you guys about new Star Wars content? Because it's got me thinking, what's worked best so far since the Disney takeover? For me, it's the new original content, and more specifically, the content with brand new characters in, bar Resistance. We don't talk about that. The Mandalorian, for example, we need more original content like that because they've proven when they put their mind to it with the likes of Favreau and Filoni, they can create absolutely awesome Star Wars content that would quite easily and, quite happily sit into the Lucas era. So how excited are you about new Star Wars content? And when will we see some more original content with new characters going into production? And by going to production, I mean not get shut down because of creative differences, 2 weeks into the writing process or however long. It's getting quite frustrating, I think, for most Star Wars fans, the fact that all these projects keep getting cut, or directors changing, or, storylines being passed from one director to another. I think they just need to all sit around a big table, have a big plan for the next 5-10 years and actually create content that makes sense. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen until Kathleen Kennedy has gone and hopefully someone like Filoni takes the wheel. What are your thoughts on that? And part two of my question is about the toy industry. So do you think all of this confusion about creative differences, which projects are going ahead, which projects aren't going ahead, do you think that's affecting the Star Wars toy industry? Because the likes of Hasbro, to me, seem like they've become very confused as to what toys to put out, what toys to work on, what toy lines to announce, that kind of stuff. So surely that confusion has got to be coming from the top. So why don't they just strip it back, keep it simple, so we can have events like 2015's Force Friday. So, do you think all of this confusion is affecting the toy industry as well? Thanks for the consistently great content you guys put out every week. I listen to it every week without fail, including all of the extra shows you put out on your Patreon, which I would highly recommend to any Star Wars fan. I've got to go now because I've got a cup of tea and a nice sausage sandwich waiting for me. So, ciao for now.
Could this guy be any more British? I love it. Thanks very much, Dusty. Those are great questions, and thank you for the sentiments. I'll tackle the Jim. I'll tackle part two of his question if you want to talk a little bit about part one, the confusion, and why are they not sitting around a big table and mapping this stuff out? Or are they?
Well, I think there's kind of tug of war going on, between Disney, between Lucasfilm, between people within Lucasfilm. There's a lot of hand-wringing going on about the way in which the franchise should proceed. They've definitely pulled back on the reins considerably. I think a more prudent approach is being taken with Star Wars these days, and I think that's reflective in things like Force Friday announcements, or not Force Friday, Disney Plus Day announcements. He brought up Force Friday, so I got that on the brain. But last Friday was the Disney Plus, and of course, fans are disappointed with the lack of Star Wars stuff. But we know that there is Star Wars stuff on the horizon. I mean, we're just a month away from Book of Boba Fett, and then we talked about all those shows going into 2023 that are coming. Mm-hmm. So the course is in front of us, just not cinematically at all. And I believe that with the blow up of Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, which was supposed to be new characters, keep in mind, that was an attempt to then bring in new characters and
set in sequel trilogy or post sequel trilogy, perhaps.
Right. In a galaxy where they're cleaning up the First Order mess is what I assume Rogue Squadron would have been, much like I assume Rangers of the New Republic is about the New Republic cleaning up the mess left behind by the Empire.
Right.
So it seems like those are two kind of similar projects, just set in different eras. And they do provide a good trampoline for all sort of different directions to take the story into. Again, it's kind of a slippery slope, as we've all come to see. So I think patience is a virtue in this situation, and it might just be a good idea for us to pay attention to what's right in front of us, as opposed to trying to find out things we hope are in development or things that we hope are going to be on the way in the future. It's like we got the next 2 years pretty much plotted out for us, and that's good enough for me right now, I think.
That's a really good point, because why set yourself up for all that? And sometimes I think we were better off when we didn't know what was going to be coming on, during the fall season, until that TV Guide fall preview came out. You know what I mean? Like before the internet. So the expectations weren't crazy high, because they weren't being built up over, spans of years and years and years. And I know it's a completely different time now, and they want to get this information out. It serves a lot of things. One, it keeps them in the news in between production cycles. It also gets the stockholders excited and happy that they're announcing new things. So there's a lot of pressure to make these announcements. But man, the scale of them or the sheer volume of them is just nuts. Jim, what you were saying about releasing these films, these film release dates back at the beginning of the Disney reign over Lucasfilm, without a script, without even an idea. I mean, yeah, I think that they have more ideas, but what was that thing a year ago when they announced all those series, if not just sort of history repeating itself, with them throwing out a bunch of show titles, one movie title, without really having what seems like a real plan to make them all happen?
Yeah, that gets into some dangerous territory there, doesn't it? So I think we have what we need for now. Would I like to see a more solid direction in the film franchise? Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But I think that prudence is key. And I think that developing a great idea is the most important thing Lucasfilm can do right now. I mean, full development of a story and a direction to take the franchise beyond where they're at just with one-offs, because I have a feeling like Rogue Squadron would have been a one-off, the Taika film, one-off, the Feige film, one-off. I'd probably like to see a more solid continuity approach taken to where Star Wars is going. But then again, we know nothing about the Feige film. We know nothing about the Waititi film. But we do know Rogue Squadron is not going to happen. I know a lot of the wording in the Variety report said, it's been
postponed, rescheduled, pushed back, all that stuff. Yeah.
It's never going to happen. Yeah. It's never going to happen, at least with the current management in place at Lucasfilm. They were so anxious to get Patty Jenkins on board with the franchise too, and they let that slip through their fingers, which I think is dangerous. That's what I think is dangerous. going on for years and years saying that top priority is to get a female director working on Star Wars, and they finally get her and they scare her off.
Yeah. Right.
Or it's maybe not even scaring her off. They just created an environment for her that was controlling and micromanagement style that didn't jibe with her. And as a result, her script kept having to get retooled and her film kept having to get reimagined in so many different ways. It might have become absolutely unrecognizable from the film she pitched Lucasfilm to begin with. And as a result, then a year and a half of her life is going to get thrown out the window because she'd spent so much time working on Rogue Squadron and not other projects. And with her being so sought after, I think that is a big blow. It's a big blow to somebody at that point in their career, when they're hot property, when they're in their prime, and when it's all coming together for them, to have them sit on the sideline for a year and a half working on a movie that's never going to happen. I think that could be very damaging, actually. So
I do too. I think it's going to be tough for them to attract top talent with the track.
Well, I think that's what it's come down to now.
Yeah.
That's what I think it's come down to now. So the smartest thing that Lucasfilm can do, and I think they're doing it, is that they are bringing up people through their farm system, aka Disney Plus, and then sooner or later, like a Deborah Chow will have the opportunity to direct a Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Or
Dave Filoni. Maybe.
Well, or Dave Filoni, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. Right.
You know, if they want to check off that box, a female director, you know, they had the prime candidate to fill that role. And they had her right in their grasp, and then she just slipped right through their fingers. And so, yeah.
Well, in her
you
personal,
you win some, you lose some.
Right. And her personal connection, you know, with her father being a fighter pilot and killed in action and all of that. I mean, she really was perfect for that movie. And I don't think that movie would have been a thing without her. I think that she was guiding, you know, it's like, all right, pick something in Star Wars that you would feel really excited about. And I love planes. I love fighter pilots. I love TIE fighters and X-Wings and all that. Real quick, just to finish up this call, as far as the merchandise and the toys, I think it's suffering from a lot of different problems. I think one problem that we can all see around us from everything is supply chain issues and shipping issues. And keep in mind that COVID goes back to China at the end, second half of 2019. So that had a huge impact on manufacturing and, the factories and all of that. So, but we know that Hasbro was having distribution problems before that. But this certainly compounded it. It certainly made it a different thing. As far as their inability to be, I think, nimble as they used to be, or appearing to be nimble as they used to be, where you could actually get product out when the film or the TV series was launching and all of that. I think that does have a lot to do with the way Lucasfilm handles things now. I think the mystery, keeping everything secret, and in sort of the on again, off again way these projects go, I think that Hasbro, who has to invest millions and millions of dollars in tooling and sculpting and all of that, they can't be bit by more of these Captain Zuvio scenarios and things like this. And so I think that they're waiting for these characters to become established and out there and see what fan reaction is to see who gets a character. I think Mayfeld coming out as a Black Series figure is a great example. I think if people didn't really like the character, didn't care about seeing Bill Burr in Star Wars, they could have easily skipped that character, but people like him a lot and want him to come back. And so now you're getting a figure. So I think it's a double-edged sword. You're getting characters in some cases, and we can talk about vintage collection in a second, but as far as Black Series, which is clearly Hasbro's focus, you are getting characters that you want, not as many, and not in a timely fashion. But I think that some of that has to do with Lucasfilm and the way that they sort of treat the licensees. The other thing I just want to say, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say they don't offer much independence to the licensees. And I think Hasbro used to have a certain degree of independence when it came to creating characters, and they would rely on market research. They would rely on fan feedback. But now I think they're really under the control of Lucasfilm, being told, create merchandise surrounding these characters and these characters only. Don't veer off the course. And it's all their call.
Case in point, everybody that's, getting the pitchforks and the torches after Hasbro with the whole Rancor HasLab thing, saying, where's our Oola figure? You're not going to get an Oola figure. You're not going to get a female character in chains wearing a bikini that's dancing in front of your Rancor is about to eat you. It's not going to happen.
I didn't even think of that. Because that is a character. And also Yarna also gets brought up as a character that people would like to see offered with the Rancor.
Yeah.
And people certainly have voiced a lot of displeasure with this current HasLab Rancor because the figures they're offering are limited. You get like 2 full-size ones, a Luke and a Gamorrean, plus a little Salacious Crumb and then some plastic bones and a cardboard backdrop for $350. And so if you do the math on all of that, it's like you're spending $100 on the incentives and then $250 on that Rancor figure. And people are looking at that Rancor figure going, is that worth $250? Much less the $350 that Hasbro wants, so they can give you a reissued Luke Skywalker action figure, a reissued Gamorrean Guard action figure, just on different cards, and a Salacious Crumb figure, which I believe is coming in a multi-pack that you can pick up at Galaxy's Edge right now.
Right.
So there's not really any exclusivity surrounding the incentives that they're offering for the Rancor, the HasLab Rancor, that really appeal to anyone. So, it seems like there's missteps going on there. It seems like there's a little bit of arrogance about the whole marketing campaign, as if saying, well, the box says Star Wars on it. Aren't you drooling all over it? Why aren't you drooling all over it?
Like the Rancor.
Like the Rancor itself. But I just think that maybe collectors are becoming a little more discerning, maybe a little more picky, and maybe a little less naive. I
totally agree.
think that's the evolution of the collector, and I don't think that Hasbro nor Lucasfilm respond. They're actually kind of tone deaf to all of those developments.
Real quick, I want to touch on the vintage collection, the 3 3/4 inch line, because I think the problem there is, and it might even be a problem with the Black Series, maybe but to a lesser extent, is that I don't think that Star Wars 4-inch action figures should be handled by a mass market toy company like a Hasbro. I think they should be one of the boutique, smaller companies that know how to really cater to the collector, because kids aren't buying them. Gift givers aren't going into the stores and buying Star Wars action figures. Not to the level that would justify more product, in which case I'm saying, well, then if you're telling me out of one side of your mouth that there's not enough people buying it for us to get more product into the stores, then I'm saying, well, then why are you holding on to the license for that? Because now as a collector, I'm not getting what I want because you can't get that license can't go to, another company that is perfectly happy, creating and dealing with direct to consumer, direct to collector kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
well, the direct-to-collector stuff should be happening. And the way to alleviate any missteps as far as overproduction of merchandise or fan-base frustration is to simply start up a subscription service where collectors can get their hands on the action figures they want and not have to worry about it. And then that way, your production numbers are already set in stone. And you can then correctly predict and forecast what the consumer reaction is going to be. I don't see what's so hard about that. The explanation I've been given is, well, they don't want to do that because they'd have to hire somebody then to run that department.
Yes.
It's like, so are you telling me they want to leave all that money on the table just so they don't have to pay someone's health insurance? I mean, what's going on here? You know, that's the problem with corporate America, quite honestly.
And that's right. And that's why you've got companies like NECA and Super 7 that are, you know, doing really, really cool things for other franchises that we wish that would be done for Star Wars, but it won't because the sales have to be so ungodly high for them to even justify it. That's the problem. Whereas the other companies, it's not. Okay, one more.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Jimmy. This is Alex from West Virginia, and I wanted to talk about a couple of recurring topics from the show over the past couple months. One being the legacy of Attack of the Clones, and the other being JJ's mystery box. And I think we can all agree that the resolution to those mysteries in the sequel trilogy left something to be desired. And Jimmy, I know you've even indicated that you'd like to see us straying away from the whole mystery element in future Star Wars projects. And while I can agree with that to an extent, I do think one of the most overlooked and undervalued strengths of Attack of the Clones was the mystery and conspiracy plots. That of the creation of the clone army and the whole Sifo-Dyas element, and Dooku pretty much outing Palpatine, except for in name, to Obi-Wan towards the end of that film. And even though in my mind I knew all roads would lead to Palpatine, even though they don't come right out and say it, it was so intriguing to even now go back watching that film and see how the Jedi react and how the Senate react and what elements are at play and how easily it could have all been given away and stopped, but it wasn't. And I think George weaved that into the story quite masterfully, and I would have liked to have seen more of that followed up on in Revenge of the Sith. So I do like those mystery and conspiracy elements and believe they could work in Star Wars in the future, but with a little bit better execution. Anyway, thanks for taking this, and curious to hear your thoughts. Peace.
Well, there's a big difference in having the knowledge that all roads lead to Palpatine, which you had as a viewer, I had as a viewer, and George Lucas understood as a storyteller. That stuff's essential. The stuff about creating a mystery as a gimmick without really having a solid payoff in mind, that is where I get lost. In so much in TV nowadays, it's nonlinear storytelling. And it really frustrates me because the story then takes second place to the mystery itself. And as we saw in the Star Wars sequel trilogy and another J.J. Abrams franchise, Lost, in which the writers and producers admitted they didn't know where any of these mysteries were leading until they actually sat down and started to consider the conclusion of the series. I mean, that's what happened with Lost. And JJ brought that same element to Star Wars. Creating a mystery just for the sake of creating a mystery is the epitome of hollow storytelling in my book, especially when all roads can lead to anywhere and those roads will shift with the wind. And we certainly know that episode 9, production started on episode 9 and it was going in one direction, and then everything changed during the pre-production and actually during the shooting of that film. Daisy Ridley has gone on the record as saying that episode 9 turned into a vastly different movie. The story was vastly different than what they had originally set out to tell. And that is taking this mystery box element and using it to create these mysteries that don't really even exist within the universe in which the story is happening. It's just like being made up on the fly. And I don't like it that way. That's what made the prequels great, was that it had to go in a certain direction. The dominoes had to fall in a certain way for it to make any sense at all. You don't get that with with the sequel trilogy whatsoever.
Yeah, I think mystery for the sake of mystery, versus mystery because it tells a really cool story. I like that, and I agree with Alex. About some of the coolest parts about Attack of the Clones is the assassination attempt on Padme. The whodunit sort of mysteries that unfold with Obi-Wan, and he's kind of a spy in a way, and all that. I think it could have been told in a little sleeker. I think George could have had maybe a little bit more fun with that. But still, the elements were there. The element of mystery was there, and I like that. I like it a lot. But as you point out, Jim, I mean, what the J.J. Abrams trope, and that's really what it is sort of, there's this, we're going to create this mystery because we don't really know what it is, but, we're going to get it in there so that it creates intrigue.
Yeah. It's a lack of planning.
Yeah.
Which the sequel trilogy reeks of. And it's not even strong storytelling. It's a gimmick, plain and simple. It's a gimmick. I mean, J.J. Abrams has got to quit trotting out this mystery box stuff because it's garbage. It's a garbage way to tell a story, to create a mystery that has no substance until you figure it out.
Right.
I get stories evolve. I get how just about any movie will change from script to screen. I get that. But the idea of the mystery box is to create a mystery that the audience can't figure out because the filmmakers haven't figured it out yet.
True confession right here, and this is absolute true story. I stopped caring who Rey's parents were the moment I found out for a fact that the writers themselves didn't know. At that point, that's when I stopped caring, because I go,
no substance.
Right. What am I trying to figure out? There's nothing to figure out.
There's nothing
if
there.
It hasn't been decided.
There's nothing there. Why am I going to spend time considering and thinking about something that doesn't even exist?
Right.
I don't have that kind of faith in Hollywood. It's just like, all right, well, then just throw it at me. What do you got? Throw it at me and I'll try to figure it out. Mystery for the sake of mystery without any solution is a bad way to tell a story. Just plain and simple. And I don't care how rich J.J. Abrams is. I don't care what kind of box office he brings in. It's crap storytelling. It's pure Shiite. And, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be the one to say it, but it's true. I want to be entertained by these movies just as much as anyone else, but I require a tiny bit of substance. I require a little bit of storytelling integrity
and forethought. How about that?
This isn't choose your own adventure. This is supposed to be set in stone. And that was one thing that George did brilliantly, was he always acted like the mythology had been set in stone, even if it wasn't. He always treated it with that amount of respect. Without revealing too much to us.
Right.
And that's what helped us maintain confidence in him. It's hard to have confidence in filmmakers when they don't have a clue to where their stories are going. It's hard to have confidence in film studios when they don't have a plan for a trilogy, but they launch the trilogy just, it's almost like, getting into a car and having no idea where you're going. What kind of trip is that?
Yeah. And then you want your passenger to guess. Hey, guess where we're going?
Yeah.
Your passenger's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then you're like,
3.
I don't know either.
I don't know. Well, let's just see where we go. It's a mystery box. Star Wars needs to be treated with a little more care and a little more integrity. And we think that Favreau and Filoni have a plan in place. Dave Filoni said he'd been thinking about the story of Ahsoka for a long time. But whatever we finally see, I'm sure won't be 1,000% what Dave Filoni had always thought of either, because like I said, it'll go through a series of changes from script to screen, but I'm sure that Dave Filoni's game plan is going to stay in place throughout the entire season of Ahsoka. It's going to all be there, and things are going to be presented to us that will have a proper payoff because it had already been thought out and planned ahead. So I'm looking forward to Ahsoka. I'm looking forward to the Book of Boba Fett. I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving turkey. And I'm looking forward to pumpkin pie.
Indeed. Well, I'm looking forward to a heck of a lot more Rebel Force Radio here, wrapping up 2021 and then well into 2022. There's so much to digest. There's going to be even more. Talk about a bountiful meal of Star Wars. A steady diet is coming our way here in 2022. Just give you the rundown again. We're looking at Book of Boba Fett, December, January. Thinking about a Bad Batch season 2 in late winter, early spring, maybe around March. And then that's going to lead into Kenobi in May, around May the 4th, 2022, which will take us into Andor. That's already been confirmed for fiscal quarter 4 in 2022, August, September range. And then Mando season 3 in December. That's a lot of after shows, man.
Oh my God. We'll be here.
And we're so grateful that you're here and listening to the show. Thank you to everyone who submitted a voicemail or a voice memo as part of our feedback. Really appreciate it. We've got more, so we'll try to, and they're recent, so we'll try to pepper these in maybe over the next couple of shows.
Yeah, or maybe even get a Comlink episode out on Patreon.
Well, maybe even do that.
Like half a year since we've done it. Yeah.
But speaking of Patreon, yes, don't forget RFR All Access available on Patreon, where you get the weekly full show video. So the show that you're listening to right now, you could actually be watching. Plus, as we mentioned, exclusive podcasts like Comlink, the RFR Q&A, the Babu Freaks, Clone Wars Declassified Remastered, and the exclusive home of the much heralded Star Wars Oxygen podcast. And you can also jump to the head of the queue when calling in on our live shows. And as we say, we're going to have a lot of live shows in 2022. Mm-hmm. So if you want to make sure that your call gets answered, the best way to do that is identify yourself to our call screener as a Patreon member. We'll know. We'll know if you're not telling the truth. And get you on at the top of that. Also, it really is, you were talking about the number, Jim, relative to the size of this audience listening to the podcast, it is a small number, but it's a great community of Star Wars fans that don't always see eye to eye on everything, but who does? But they always talk about it with respect and fun and good cheer, and they keep it grounded in Star Wars, which is so important these days. Details for all of that can be found at rebelforceradio.com. Click on the Patreon banner, or just go to patreon.com/RFR. A little plug here. Don't forget about our Chut Chut shirts. They go on sale Friday after Thanksgiving, probably around 10 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure that you go over to rebelforceradio.com. We'll have a graphic. You won't be able to miss it. We'll put it that way. It's going to be up prominently on rebelforceradio.com, and you can order it. As I say, we've got Jimmy Mac Black. We got Military Green. We have Heather Swank. And we've got Stormy Blue. So those have been a long time coming.
Isn't that the name of your daughter, Heather Swank?
No, it's Bailey.
Oh,
Bailey. You're thinking of Hillary Swank.
No, I keyed.
I know. Also, thanks to our sponsors this week over at BetterHelp and ExpressVPN. As a reminder, as we think about these after shows, Jim, what are we going to do if we happen to be at ICCCon when we need to be recording an after show? Maybe we'll do a live after show from ICCCon. Check that out. We're going to be there live and in person in April 2022. That's in Nashville, Tennessee. Go to ICCCon.com, get tickets, use the code RebelForce10 at checkout, and you'll save 10% off your ticket price. Another thing we'd like you to do is check us out over on YouTube. It is really, I mean, you think about as long as we've been doing this show, 15 years, it's just such a repository of Rebel Force Radio highlights, everything from classic interviews and parodies and bits to the latest live stream, and all the after shows are there, which we do those exclusively live on YouTube, and then those archives remain up for you to watch. Also, new full show audio drops on YouTube as a sort of a appointment listening thing if you have the time, and other people, other listeners are checking it out at the same time. That's kind of fun. And if we didn't mention it enough, the email address, show@rebelforceradio.com, show@rebelforceradio.com. Send us your voice memos or leave your voicemails at 708-320-1737. That's 708-320-1RFR. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. Speaking of Twitter, check us out, RFR Rebel Force. RFR Rebel Force. We're Rebel Force Radio everywhere else, but at Twitter, RFR Rebel Force. Don't be fooled by imitators. But if you really want to help out Rebel Force Radio, the best way is, as we said at the top of the show, tell your friends, keep listening. Let them know if you got a Star Wars fan in your life, if they've not heard of Rebel Force Radio, tell them to check us out. You can subscribe and you can review Rebel Force Radio on your podcatcher of choice. We love to have the subscriptions. We also love to have those reviews. Just one rule, please.
Make them good.
And you can find us streaming 24/7. Websites like Jedi News. We're on iHeart, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, Audible, Pandora, Samsung. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you'll find us right here at Rebel Force Radio. And we'll see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.